My name is Ron Simon. I'm head curator at the Paley Center, and it's my pleasure now to welcome to the stage producer, writer, director of Black Table, Bill Mack. Congratulations. It's such a relevant film today, and it's just compelling, and the audience was with it the whole time. So congratulations. So I'd like to ask the first question with you and your partner, John James. When did the idea come to do the Black Table? How and what was the original inspiration for this great film?
Well, the original inspiration was the existence of the table. That the fact that it was a thing in the 90s and it was a thing before the 90s. But in creating this film, my partner, John James, had just completed a film earlier, right before the pandemic, and was in Sundance. And he was looking for his next project, and he remembered that there was this thing in college that kind of was peculiar to him, and that was the Black Table. So he called Wesley Morris and said, you know, nothing's happening. It's pandemic. There is no production going on here. I can get a really cheap location. Let's sit down and talk about this Black Table thing and see if there's a movie here. So that's what he did. He did a set of interviews, and then he gave me a ring a few months into it after he'd put together like a sizzle reel and showed me the clip. I saw Sheldon, I saw Mishka, I saw a number of them, Imani, and I said, wow, this I haven't seen before. One, I knew the people. I knew everyone. I'm class of 95. I sit right in the middle of the class of 97 and the class of 94, who sort of are mostly featured in the film. And I said, how can I help? You need me to sit down? I'm willing to do an interview. Or whatever. And after a few months of going back and forth and trying to figure out sort of a role for me, we decided that it'd be best if I just co-directed it, because he was coming from it from the other, in a way. He's Puerto Rican, but you know, he did not sit at the Black Table. So for him, it was a phenomenon. And he started asking his Black friends what was going on there. And I'm like, well, I know what was going on there. So, you know, I knew other people that he maybe didn't know as well, and we were able to put together our talent and resources to make the film.
And you all the subjects are just so remarkable, but you concentrate on three dynamic individuals, or Sheldon, the tech entrepreneur Sheldon Gilbert, Amy Allen, attorney and jazz singer, and Wesley Morris, the Pulitzer Prize-winning writer. Why did you decide those three to tell the story of the Black Table?
We actually did start with a larger group, and it had to do with access, and it also had to do with the story arcs. Like what we found with Sheldon and with Wesley and with Amy was that their stories were unique and compelling, and basically by dealing with people both before they went to college and how they got into college and so forth, and then fast forwarding to 25 years after graduation, which was basically the present, we were able to capture pretty much the entire life of someone. So a mini autobiography of these people. And where Sheldon was this, you know, amazing tech entrepreneur and Wesley was this amazing writer, Amy was, I think, the character that more focused that is more relatable to people, like someone who doesn't necessarily fit in, didn't necessarily love, you know, or believe that they belonged at the Ivy League, and in her post experience found that it was jazz, not necessarily the law, that was the most interesting. So we wanted to give, you know, sort of this whole spectrum of high achieving Americans who happen to be Black, who demonstrate the diversity that we all have as Americans, that you have choice. You don't have to necessarily become a doctor like some of our subjects are, or a professor like some of our subjects are, or a chief of police.
And one individual who just opens the film, ends the film, Woody Woodhouse, is such a remarkable guy, and I've read his bio. It's just tremendous. When did you find him?
So literally, we went to the class of 97's reunion was on time, unlike my reunion and the '94's reunion, because of the pandemic. So things were pushed back, but theirs was on time, and they do all the reunions of that same 5-year period at the same time. So class of '97 happened to have a reunion as the same time as the class of '52. Obviously, class of '97's reunion had better attendance. But Woody was one person we just literally saw walking around the campus for that weekend. And we said, well, we just have to get an interview with him. We didn't know his story. We didn't know anything about the Tuskegee Airmen or anything like that till we met him. And we sat down with him, had breakfast with him, recorded him, and then we were able to get that scene, or those collection of scenes that you saw. And originally, it wasn't in the first cut of the film. It did not make the first cut. We didn't have the affirmative action theme as part of the film, driving force of the film originally. It was more about just the culture wars from the '90s and how that reflects, obviously, the culture wars we've been going through in the 2020s or the 2010s or the 2000s or the culture wars. Okay, but then because all of our subjects all spoke about affirmative action as part of sort of this badge of dishonor that they had to wear after getting into Yale. And then during their time at Yale, it still just kept creeping up. And then there was Woody, who was before affirmative action. It just sort of started to fit together. And obviously, the 2023 decision to strike down affirmative action was also happening contemporaneously. So we just put all these elements together, tried to give you a brief history of affirmative action without too many details so as to get boring. But, we wanted to drive the story by personal stories. And I think that's what people relate to. How did you feel? Not about the systemic issues. What happened to you? How did it make you feel? So that's what we focused on.
Someone mentioned there might be quite a few Yale graduates here. I'm just curious, how many people in the audience did go to Yale? So there is a few. I know when you showed it at Tribeca in New York City, there were quite a bit of.
It was a room full of Yale people in Tribeca, but that was our premiere, so that was a home field audience. I like to see the reaction from people who didn't go to Yale, because the movie was not made for just people who go to Yale, even though I'm sure it resonates more with Yaleys. But Yale's just a lens. And frankly, Yale is really good with affirmative action and diversity and inclusion, and continues to be. But despite that, folks still have an issue and have had issues to present day at that institution and many others across the country who are less conscious of these types of issues.
Could you talk about the reaction of the film to contemporary Yaleys? You've shown it to a few people.
We screened in October for the first time at Yale, and it was just a kind of a small screening at the African American Cultural Center, which most of the Black students are a part of. And it was a great reaction. The younger students, my experience going back and forth to the school while over the course of filming the movie and at the reunion and pickup footage after that, was the campus is more diverse than it used to be. The campus has a large number of women. It felt like there's so many more women than I remembered. And, lots of people of color. I think that there was, just the way that the Black table was organized and the way Commons was organized back then, it was more conducive to forming a Black table. Now the tables are round. I think you saw some of them in the film that you can't really put them together the way you could before. I don't think that was intentional, though. I think that overall people are better adjusted than before. But at the screening, a number of folks who were either freshmen or first-year grad students expressed directly, and it was almost like a therapy session, that they were having issues currently. And we're talking about October, and they just started the school in September or late August. So it's real. Specifically, a couple of Haitian students, and we know why, were having issues. Other students were being misidentified as New Haven townies, which is something that happens quite often.
So, Bill, you're not in the film. You could have been. But could you tell your story? It's remarkable. You were a child actor at 3. So you just talk about how you became an actor, then into documentary film.
Well, it's a long process. I mean, I did start as a child actor. My dad's in the audience, and he took me on many auditions when I was a kid. Most noteworthy audition was for Sesame Street. And it so happened that my father took me to the World Trade Center the morning before that audition. And when they gave me a puzzle or a bunch of blocks to make something, that's part of the audition, I made 2 towers out of the blocks. And it was just the simplest thing. It took me, 30 seconds to build. And they said, "Oh, wow, what's that?" And I said, "The Twin Towers. You're hired." So I was on Sesame Street in the early years. And I had a great time as a child actor, did a lot of commercials, and I was on All My Children, the soap opera, for years. And then I just was kind of a funny size when I was sort of pubescent, like a lot of people get. And I didn't book. After I was like 13, I stopped booking. And once I stopped booking every job I went on, I didn't want to do it anymore. I just wanted to like play sports and just be part of my high school experience. And simultaneously, I picked up a camera. And because my dad got a video camera because he liked to go fishing, and he was filming the fishing, and then I started filming everything. So that's what kind of drove me as a filmmaker. I had a lot of experience behind the scenes as a kid. I actually got to play Oscar when he walked around, which was rare. I was Oscar's legs. And then, I developed into a filmmaker myself from there.
I know we have one producer in the audience.
Yeah, my producer, Katie Tabor, who we could not have made the film without. She's here. Also, Luis Miranda, Lin-Manuel's father, was a critical part of making this film, as he was John's first film, which was a bit about him, essentially. But he's a really good friend to the arts. He's a huge New York politician, very powerful and a Democrat. And he's really helped us with this film, open doors for us.
What has been the audience reaction as you've traveled around the city, around the country, especially thinking about affirmative action and the Supreme Court's decision?
The overwhelmingly people enjoy the film. Just like in this audience, people laughed at the funny parts. I mean, this topic is about an elephant in the room. Okay, this is not something that people necessarily want to talk about. We have Dr. Beverly Tatum, who wrote the book "Why Do All the Black Kids Sit Together in the Cafeteria?" And this is one of those things that we don't necessarily want to bring up, but the purpose of it is to expose those who didn't sit at a table and say, well, it's not that intimidating, it's just normal, okay? And then it's for others who did sit at the table, it's sort of an amen moment. And to answer your question, we got that obviously at the Tribeca screening with the room full of Yaleys a few times. But then I screened in DC, and that was a very good audience. Fewer Yaleys, but still some. But it was well received. The best audience, or neutral audience, besides this one, was in Sacramento, California, which is doesn't have the East Coast thing, And that was, to me, that was really special because I'm like, okay, they're California, they're super chill, they don't have that northeastern, Ivy League thing exactly happening here. And overwhelmingly, the audience reacted and laughed at every joke moment. And also, people came up to me with their stories, mostly from the Northeast, about this having a similar feeling when they either attended undergraduate or college.
So what are your plans for the film? Are you going to stream it, or are you going to release it, or take it to colleges? So many things you can do with this great film.
Yeah, if I could stream it, I would. If I had a streaming service, I'd put it on there tomorrow. But yeah, I mean, there's talks for screenings that would be, hopefully we have a streaming deal by Black History Month this year. So that's, something on the horizon. Some of the distribution's been delayed due to the election. Before nobody wanted to buy, now after, we'll see. But we're definitely going to campuses. We've got a lot of inquiries from, diversity, inclusion types who think the movie's relevant. And I didn't think of it. I didn't look at this movie as something that was like a DEI or whatever movie when we were making it. We were just trying to tell a story of something real. But in the context, a contemporary context, obviously there's opportunity to sort of roadshow the movie at universities, or even in the corporate space. I mean, it's definitely something that people can relate to and understand. And it's it's an occurrence. The black table is a phenomenon that continues to happen in education, in the workforce, in social situations. So I think it's extremely relevant, and I'm willing to travel and talk about it at any point. I think that it's about how it affects any individual person who watches it.
Well, thank you so much for being part of Hamptons Doc Fest, and congratulations again.
Thank you. I appreciate it. Thanks for having me.